If there's ever a category of lost media that I like researching more than existence unconfirmed, it's the content that is definitely known to exist, but has fallen so deep into obscurity it has avoided all home media releases, fan recordings, or even being put on streaming services. There are actually quite a lot more topics that fall into this category than you might expect, and the first topic of this video is exactly about one of those. It takes us to the UK and to a very short-lived series that I had never even heard about until the plethora of requests I got to look into it. And wow, was I surprised with what I found, or what I didn't find in this case. That topic is called Audrey and Friends, an animated series that ran on Channel 5's Milkshake block, as well as the regular Shake block in 2002. Now, the series itself is pretty straightforward when it comes to its plot, as it follows a tween girl, the titular character named Audrey, her friends, and her dog as they navigate life in typical teenage fashion. However, what's not so typical about this show, and is possibly the one thing most people remember from it, is the odd and somewhat bizarre animation style. When I first looked at some of the promotional artwork for the series, it appeared as though it was just really stylized 2D. But if you watch a few of the clips of the show that are available online, you'll see the characters are actually 3D models, just angled and outlined really weird. This gives them an odd movement, on top of the fact that their facial expressions and lip sync look quite strange too. As far as we know, the whole 26-episode series is like this. However, the most interesting part about it, aside from the animation, is the fact that it's almost entirely lost. There isn't a single main episode from this show that is uploaded or available online, with the exception of the pilot, otherwise known as the Christmas special, which originally aired on TV in December 2000. This was 2 years before the series officially premiered. The Christmas special was found from a home recording, as like I said, no portion of the series was released onto home media, and it seems like that will never happen either, as it was confirmed the master tapes no longer exist. So now, we have no clue where we can even find the other episodes. User LovelyAngel1004 contacted a crew member about this, but despite the attempt, no new episodes have come up yet. The most that was acquired were mock-ups using character art, but it's far from episodes or even clips with audio from episodes. And what's worse is that it seems like nobody recorded them back in the day when they were airing, because one of the writers even stated that the show suffered from poor ratings. This severely reduces the amount of people that would have had them on tape. So now we're dealing with an obscure show that not many people liked in the first place. But that doesn't mean all hope is lost for this series, as it did re-air again after its initial run. These airings included Prime TV in New Zealand in 2003, the BFBS channel from late 2003 to early 2004, and then on a defunct streaming service called Scamp in 2005. So even if nobody recorded the episodes during their initial broadcast, there is still a chance more recordings were made. But it should be said that even if these episodes never get found, that's not to ignore the fact that we do have a lot of asset material from this show. Cool stuff that we would never see otherwise, like backgrounds, character art, and even some props. A few screenshots from episodes exist too, as well as the summaries of them, though I'm not exactly sure where these originated from. But apparently the show's existence was first mentioned on IMDb, so maybe all of this info was available on Channel 5's website back in the day, and it was sort of transferred over throughout the years. The show is very interesting, but its backstory even more so. While I feel like Playhouse Disney content usually gets overshadowed by Nick Jr., once you start remembering all the shows from that block, the memories come flooding back. And in the past, we've talked quite a lot about Playhouse Disney lost media. People always remember stuff like Ooh and Ah, The Wiggles and Bear in the Big Blue House, but there was a lot of less remembered content that surprisingly has lost media connected to it, that really no one has discussed before. One good example of this is a show that I actually used to watch a lot on the block, but completely forgot about until now. It's Roly Poly Oly. This was a CGI show about a family of robots living in a circular world that centered around daily life. While the series premiered in 1998, its existence dates back to a series of drawings that creator William Joyce had previously made. Joyce had drawn a lot of sketches of robot families that can be described as having imaginative features and a 1950s feel, which caught the eye of Nelvana's US operations president, Topper Taylor, who asked if a test animation could be created using these sketches. It was never Joyce's intention to create a show with them, but he was given full creative control of the project, so a test animation was produced in 1997 at Windlight Studios, a year before the series premiered. It was then pitched to Disney, with Joyce remaining in complete control of his vision, becoming a full show and having a successful run for several years. However, while the show itself is not hard to find, the pilot is. And it's also one of those topics that's completely lost, because there's almost nothing from it that can be seen. The Lost Media Wiki article does contain some visuals, but they're mostly concept art related, and don't relate directly to the pilot itself. However, there are two small screenshots from the pilot that were put online, one of which is sourced to a SIGGRAPH 97 visual proceedings pamphlet. The show mostly looks the same, but it does feel like it's missing some details compared to the final version. As for the origins of this second screenshot, showing what looks like the same scene, it's unknown where it came from. Even though there is currently no video of the pilot online, and it doesn't seem like anyone has started looking for it, there is one similarity I can recall from another search I've covered, and that's Johnny Quasar. This pilot to Jimmy Neutron had been mostly lost several years ago, with only a 10-second clip and some concept art having resurfaced. However, it too was shown at SIGGRAPH, and one of the co-creators of the series also believed he had a copy of it in one of his storage units. Eventually, Johnny's voice actor uploaded both tests in full, but what I'm getting at is this might not be one of those topics that's just locked away in a Disney archive, and rather it's something that William, or anyone connected to it, could have a copy of. In fact, maybe there are even some more remnants of it from SIGGRAPH that could be found. In the event that there had been more screenshots that slipped through the cracks, I came across additional concept art that is not even in the wiki article. Once again, I don't think anyone has really looked for this, so there could be more content hidden in plain sight. If you are someone who likes kid show Lost Media, and the epic hunts for bumper collections from channels you watched growing up, then do I have a topic for you. In the past, I've talked about some of these before, like the Ooh and Ah archival project from Playhouse Disney, and my first introduction to long-form bumper searches, Face from Nick Jr. But now today, there's another topic you can dig into, also from Nick Jr., and by coincidence, actually replaced Face in the mid-2000s on the block. This is the search for Piper Opossum bumpers, a little 2D animal who would introduce shows, show up during credit rolls, and basically act as the host of the block. The character was animated by Little Airplane Productions, who also did Wonder Pets, so in a way, she almost looks like she could fit into their world, and in fact, does make appearances with the characters in some bumpers. Now, if you do a search for this topic online just as it is, you can actually find quite a lot of bumpers on YouTube and archive.org, though the majority of them are from 4 years ago or more, so not many have shown up recently and the quality isn't the best. There is a fairly lengthy thread from the Lost Media Wiki forums started by Chris Toon Lover, who discusses the topic with other users, who were sharing their finds and memories with the bumpers as well. In this thread, it is also mentioned that in addition to the US set, there was a British dub, and even some that aired in Latin America and Portugal. So this search even crosses over into Lost dub territory as well. As I was looking around on YouTube to see what I could find, I even discovered a subset that aired on the Nick Jr. on CBS block that have specific dialogue and branding to those airings. There really is so much content from this series, it's hard to keep track of it all, and that's exactly why the topic remains lost to this day, at least in full. As I've mentioned before when talking about lost bumpers, there is no official master list one can look at to check off which ones have been found and which ones are still missing. Honestly, I'm shocked that there were lists for the Ooh and Ah and Face ones at all, but these were compiled manually, and depending on how long or how many different ones exist, could take countless hours putting together, especially if you include all the different language dubs. But I suppose that's what makes the hunt for these so much fun, is coming across new ones that nobody uploaded before, or even finding an undocumented one that you didn't know existed. I speculated that, even for as extensively as the Face bumper checklist was, there were probably still a whole bunch that nobody remembered. And specifically, in some of the Piper ones, she is seen announcing the premiere of a show or some kind of one-time event, which suggests that those bumpers would have only been aired once, and would be exceptionally rarer than just announcing what was coming up next every day. As recently as late 2024, this thread was still being updated with new finds, so the interest in these doesn't seem to be completely null. For me personally, one of the coolest aspects of bumper searches is getting to see the crossovers with the actual shows that were airing at the time. It gives you a cool frame of reference for what was going on during that era, and it's fun hearing a character acknowledge a fictional show as if they existed in real life. Okay, I could not go the rest of this video without talking about another almost completely lost kids show that has slipped through the cracks, especially because it makes Audrey and Friends feel mostly found. This time though, we're not talking about a British show, and instead a Canadian one that originates from the famous Treehouse TV channel. It definitely seems to be a pattern with shows that aired here, and now we're adding another to the list. This one is called Max the Cat. Now, without even getting into the show itself yet, Max the Cat in general is not very well known online. You can find some discussion of it in the lost media community and on Reddit, but that's just about all the wide attention the show has gotten. Based on the recollections of people that remember it, the series follows the titular cat named Max as he travels the world in search of his missing tail. While on these adventures, he learns about the places he visits, other cultures, and makes friends along the way. The show itself was also not really animated and looked more like a painting that moved with individual frames, and each episode ended with the line, "But that's another tale for another time." And with that said, upon searching for the show, you can't find much, besides a few bits and pieces, which could be for one big reason: the fact that this show was not actually a full show, and rather a mini-series that aired in between full shows. Claims state that each episode had a runtime of about 5 minutes, and were aired randomly throughout the day, so there was no catching it at a specific time. Max the Cat does have an archived page on Treehouse TV's old website, so they definitely acknowledged its existence back then, and there was also a schedule tab that listed when it would be on next. But there is a mention in the Lost Media Wiki forums thread for this topic about fans asking if there was any home media releases back then, as well as outright stating it was a hard show to catch. This suggests that there could be more people out there that taped it for their kids, and those recordings have just not found their way online yet, because home recordings are probably one of the only ways this could resurface in the first place. The whole series was 52 episodes long and aired from 2001 to 2003, so there is still a lot of content to find from it. But while looking into the topic for this video, I can confirm, well, none of the English episodes had resurfaced for years, with the most recent Reddit thread looking for them having been made 3 years ago. If you do a search for the series on YouTube now, you can actually find a good handful of episodes. The most recent ones were only uploaded within the past couple years, one even from a week ago, so it seems like more people are coming across these in their collections nowadays. The recollections of this show were also fairly accurate too, as each episode does end with that another tale line, and they aren't really animated. Actually, this does kind of feel like an animated storybook, because there are also no character voices, and instead, the whole plot is narrated by a single person. This might have been an intentional production choice, as this series was originally based on a book, so in a way it almost creates the illusion that you're reading a story. Now, in addition to the English dub, there are also 2 episodes from the French dub that are available online, so this suggests that there's another version out there that is almost entirely lost too, assuming the French version also has the 52 episodes that the English one does. But even without the French episodes, most of those 52 English ones are still missing, so there are a lot of uploads that need to come. Before we get to the final topic, I wanted to take a moment to have an honorable mention section for a different search I discussed not too long ago. You might have heard about this one by now, as it's gained quite a lot of attention recently, and that was the Jumper Puppet Show. In short, this was a kids' VHS tape series that one person online recalled, and we spent a lot of time searching for its origins on the Lost Media Wiki forums. However, while we're not going to be discussing that topic in particular, it does relate to the rest of the content the company might have produced. I guess this could count as a little update for both. Now, the original problem with Jumper is that we only had recollections to go off of, without knowing anything else about the series. Well, with those recollections, we eventually got the biggest lead of the search, when an ad was found in a copy of Billboard magazine that matched up exactly with the details that were recalled about it. So without a doubt, this was the completely lost kids puppet show. But what's more is that these details, namely the production company associated with Jumper, also matched up with a tape that was previously found on eBay called Eco You and Simon 2. So both series were made by the same company, and in making this connection, it led people to wonder if there was any other content made by the company that was also entirely lost to the internet. Our hope was uncovering more of these suspected tapes, but this is where the mystery begins, as currently we have no records or idea exactly how many productions Centerpoint actually made. Right now, our list only includes Eco and the alleged 4 to 6 jumper tapes that were recalled in the original post. I looked on some database websites under the company's name, but the other listings didn't seem to match up with kids or puppet content, so I don't think it's the same one. We can only speculate that it's possible there exist other puppet subseries from Centerpoint, but then again, considering how limited of a release these tapes got and how localized the production seems, maybe they didn't actually make anything else, and the company just went under with only a couple releases. If that one Eco tape was not for sale and we never saw it, the connection between all this content never would have been made. So we need more information to come to a conclusion, which means that you can keep an eye out for any other kids show productions from Centerpoint Distribution. They were located in San Jose, and the current time frame of their operation was somewhere from the late 80s to early 90s. But again, with so little information about them, it's possible that this is only a small part of their history. And finally, one of the most wanted pieces of kids show lost media that I can think of, and another highly requested topic for my videos, relates to lost media from Thomas the Tank Engine. Now, I have talked about Thomas lost media briefly in the past, but I did not cover where it all started: the search for one of the most desired and protected pieces of content from the series, and that's the original pitch pilot, called Down the Mine. While I was never a huge fan of Thomas growing up, I did have a whole wooden train set and remember seeing the show on TV, so this is something that even a casual fan like me would want to see. This topic takes us back to 1979, when Britt Allcroft got the rights to adapt the Railway series for television, where she spent over 2 years deciding on what the show would look like. Eventually, the live-action models were chosen, and production on the pilot began in May 1983. It was considered to be a low-budget project, completed in only about 3 weeks, and shot on a 35mm camera. Soon after, this pilot was used to pitch the series to networks with the hopes that someone would pick it up and adapt it into a full show. This is just about as standard of a process as you can get, and we've seen this type of pre-production content with many other shows before. But as for the content of the pilot itself, that's something we've never seen in full. The plot of the episode is said to be identical to that of the 25th episode of the main series, which is titled with the exact same name, Down the Mine. And over the years, very little content from the original pilot has ever been seen, which is where the mystery begins. The first and earliest piece of content that was recovered was a frame from the final episode that seems to have been reused from the pilot itself. Evidence for this can be seen on Thomas himself, as this model is slightly different compared to the one normally seen in the show. It appears much more simplistic. And it has also been confirmed that the pilot's models were indeed different from the final ones. So to see this change very briefly in that episode does further prove this theory as correct. There is one more image from the pilot that showed up a couple years ago, sort of out of nowhere, but this is largely everything we have for it. Video footage has never resurfaced, not even a second, and it's up for debate who even has a copy of the pilot nowadays. According to the Lost Media Wiki article, Rick Sigelko had it and screened it in the late 1980s, but it's believed he no longer does, as he said he gave all his master tapes to Thomas's license holder, Mattel. This is corroborated by a series of emails sent by the series' current producer, Ian McHugh, further claiming that Mattel is planning to remaster this pilot for the series' 80th anniversary and release it for everyone to see, which would happen this year, 2025, if it's true. No confirmation has been given on that yet, so it remains to be seen. But there are even some shadier claims that state people within the Thomas community are currently in possession of it and have been hoarding it for years. I can't speak on how true that actually is, but it wouldn't surprise me. Though even if a copy did happen to leak, I'm sure Mattel would not be happy and more drama would ensue. But even without any clips from the pilot, there is still more to see from its production that has been posted over the years. This content ranges from a bunch of script pages to some concept art, and even a couple pictures of some models. Maybe because Thomas is so popular, this stuff would have made its way online anyway, but I'd like to think that because the pilot is still lost, it makes people dig deeper and gives it a little extra attention that this content otherwise wouldn't have. This has sort of happened before with other topics too. By digging deeper simply because you have to, it unearths more content that wouldn't have been normally acquired or researched if we already had the main piece of media we were looking for. But with kids show lost media being one of the most popular categories within all of the community, even after we get the pilot, I'm sure people will still search for extra content from it and add to the history of Thomas's production. I think there is a natural interest people have with the content they grew up with and remember from back in the day. A lot of these topics come from memories people have with them, and even if you didn't grow up with something specific, I think it's also just general curiosity that crosses all types of lost media, that there exists content nobody has, and that a kid show of all things, as simple and disposable as some might see it, also has content that is literally so obscure, recollections are basically what brought them back into consciousness. And that's a pretty fascinating idea to explore. I have a lot of fun covering topics like these, and while I do plan on doing more episodes in the future, feel free to comment your own Kid Show Lost Media suggestions, and I'll add them to my list. But until these topics can all be found, they'll definitely remain a mystery.